Testing 1, 2. All right, we're live. Trevor, we are live here from Circ Bar, Downtown Ann Arbor. We're about an hour and a half away here for Michigan football kicking off their 2019 season against Middle Tennessee State. Maize and Brew out here at Circ Bar. We're planning on being for all Michigan home games this year. So those of you who are here at the bar, those of you who are listening at home, we're glad to have you here. Alongside me is a good pal of mine and sort of my cohort, so to speak. I can't talk today. Is Trevor Woods. We'll kind of be taking you through here the next half hour or so, leading up to the game. We're going to make our way over to the stadium as soon as we're done with our little discussion here. But glad that you guys are here. Glad you can be joining along. And Trevor, it's good to be back. Good to see you again and be back in Ann Arbor for some Michigan football.
Hey, it's a great day to be alive. Ball is back. The University of Michigan is going to kick off. New hopes, new aspirations, and the same old dream about to start.
Yeah, it is a season with a lot of dreams and aspirations, something that it's been a long off season. One of the longer and I'll say it, sort of more annoying off seasons of the year in terms of the off-field storylines, some of the extracurricular stuff that we've seen go on along the way. Obviously, Michigan going to a new offense, doing some different things. Before we talk about the story of this year and going into this game, we do have to kind of back things up and talk about what happened last year. And that was a season where they stumbled out of the gate, lost that game on the road at Notre Dame, rattled off 10 straight wins after that, went into Columbus at 10-1, and got punched in the mouth in really historic fashion. And for as bad as that defense was in that game, the offense kind of didn't do them any favors, and it took some some tomfoolery or some different sorts of magic to have them tied in that game at halftime. But eventually the bottom fell out, and the bowl game didn't go much better, especially when those guys decided to sit out. So I think as we went kind of headlong into this Michigan offseason, we saw a team that knew that it needed to change. And to Jim Harbaugh's credit, they knew that there were adjustments that needed to be made. And you and I had talked about this even before the end of last season, was that the sort of archaic, outdated offense that Michigan had kind of been operating in had to be adjusted, had to be changed, and Harbaugh had to kind of take a step back and give a younger guy license to lead the offense, and then in steps Josh Gaddis, and here we are with that. So for as much of the hot takery that we get about Jim Harbaugh being a stubborn guy, someone who is resistant to change, he has done just that this offseason.
You're totally correct. We've seen Jim Harbaugh run the bowl ball, 3rd and long, they run it, or just the predictability of the run. Last season there was a 60-40 run-to-pass ratio. Josh Gaddis is on record saying this season is probably going to be a 60-40 pass-run ratio, so there's going to be a big uptick in the pass plays we see. Then spread formation, not as much I form going on this season. And then a big key is Michigan last year, especially when they were down in games such as Ohio State, they didn't have the ability to run a no-huddle offense. Michigan was among the top teams in the nation when it came to plays snapped under 5 seconds. With Josh Gaddis, that's going to be the exact opposite with this new speed and space scheme. So Harbaugh, has he been stubborn? Totally. But Harbaugh's always been willing to correct his mistakes. And I just have to talk about the 49ers for 40 seconds here.
Take your time. There's always time for that.
There's always time until it runs out. But at the 49ers, they had a scheme similar to the West Coast type pro system Harbaugh's ran since the beginning of his tenure. But mid-season, Colin Kaepernick is inserted as the starting quarterback in place of Alex Smith. We see a plethora of read option runs, a pistol formation that wasn't utilized before, and a quarterback who ran for over 180 yards in the playoffs against the Green Bay Packers. So my point is Harbaugh has always been on the cusp of innovation, but everybody needs to get reminded of why they were a good coach in the first place. And that's to always be willing to adapt when what's faced ahead of you is defeat and demise because you're stuck in a rut schematically.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where you look at, again, first, like I sort of brought it up before in terms of the hot takes about Harbaugh's not a guy that's willing to change, and there are people that still don't kind of believe that he's totally given Josh Gaddis the license to run this offense. And to a certain extent, I kind of agree with that, because until we see it, I don't truly believe it. Just like, I don't believe that they can beat Ohio State until they go out and do it.
I agree.
Ohio State plays today, play earlier today, and it certainly doesn't look like that Justin Fields Ryan Day connection is going to be any drop off. I mean, there's going to be a drop off. He's maybe not throw 50 touchdowns like Dwayne Haskins did.
But it's still Urban Meyer recruiting class.
His
all
fingerprints are still all over that.
And he's on campus.
And I think something, as we move into kind of where we're heading with this game tonight, something that we saw the Buckeyes do was all offseason they've had to hear about, you guys have a new quarterback, a new coach, a new, maybe not new offense, but they're going to do some different things there. They took an off-season's worth of takes and they shoved it right down Lane Kiffin and Florida Atlantic's throats. And I would sort of like, it's been a louder offseason than that for Michigan in terms of Jim Harbaugh on the transfer rules, and people taking shots at the program, and to a certain extent, a lot of well-deserved shots, because let's face it, they haven't won enough big games. They haven't won the biggest game. So I think when we look at this team that Michigan plays tonight, Middle Tennessee State, Michigan comes in as a 34. I would like to, whether it means anything or not, and I said this on Twitter earlier today, whether it's a lot easier to explain away blowing out a non-conference opponent, saying that it doesn't matter, as opposed to maybe that game is closer than it should be, and then you have to explain that away. So I think when we talk about, I don't know what this new offense is going to be like yet. We'll see. I tend to think it's going to be a lot more similar than it is different, but I think there will be a philosophical of, hey, maybe on a 3rd and 4 where we're looking to run the ball, yeah, maybe we are going to do some of the RPO stuff. Or on a first down, you're going to throw something past the sticks. It's control more attacking and more points. Anyone who thinks this is going to be a Big 12, air raid offense, I think they're kind of fooling themselves a little bit. What you are going to see is, and as early as tonight, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they pour it on early, just because I think people see the speed and space hashtag and they get excited about it. But I think what that means to me is, it's not just that you have a fast offense, it's that we're going to make a genuine effort to get the ball to our best players in space, get them the ball in the open field, instead of the death by a million paper cuts approach.
And with the new scheme comes the limited opportunities Michigan's implemented. I mean, there was spring ball, and then they've had fall camp, which has lasted a month, but it's still in the beginning stages of a new offense. I mean, a few weeks ago, Josh Gaddis said about 2/3 of the offense was installed. So right now, they're not even to 100% of the install. With that said, why it could end up being a butt kicking tonight is why it's not 100% installed. They need the reps, and Shea Patterson, Dylan McCaffrey, True Wilson, Zach Charbonnet, and you can go depth chart number 1, number 2 on the defensive side too. All these guys need live game action in the new scheme, and Don Brown said he added some new wrinkles. So, but offense, especially, obviously completely revamped, and I expect pedal to the metal tonight, and it doesn't matter if it's a 40-0 game. I don't expect them to just run the ball, snap it with 5 seconds left. These reps are valuable. You don't get to play Middle Tennessee State the first game every season. Notre Dame was the beginning last season, okay? You didn't have that luxury. This is a glorified scrimmage preseason game. I'll say at least preseason game. It's going to be semi-competitive, but there's no excuse for Michigan not to win by over 40 points, with all due respect to Middle Tennessee State. But,
so you're calling the cover. You're calling the
I'm calling the cover. I am calling the cover this time around.
Yeah, I think I would agree with most of that. I think for as good as, let's just get into the matchup now. So Michigan football is going to come into this year, like we said, a lot of narratives to kill. If last year was the revenge tour, so to speak, to me this year is kind of like the results tour. Like, we just need to see the results and the progress each week. When you talk about the offense, like I said, I'm not expecting them to see a lot of 4 and 5 wide tonight. I think maybe you'll see that at some point, but just kind of peel things back a little bit, and I do think there are some different things going on. So opponent number 1 on the schedule, obviously the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. This is the first time that Michigan's ever played them. 151st opponent in program history. So there's not really any history there, other than, and this needs to be said, Middle Tennessee State basketball did upset Michigan State in the NCAA tournament a few years ago. This is also the first night game opener in the history of Michigan Stadium, so we've seen a lot of people out here. A ton of people were out here at Circ. Gave away a lot of T-shirts, which, hey, if you haven't made it over, or you're here listening live, come up here and get a T-shirt. We've got a ton of them left still. I think it's going to be kind of a rowdy atmosphere, and that's a tough task for any team to come into, let alone a team that's a 34-point underdog. So when I look at this team, I see there are some players there, namely Ty Lee, the wide receiver, who is going to be a bit of a, I won't say a mismatch for Michigan's secondary, but for a unit that is kind of banged up right now outside of Lavert Hill, that's going to be something to watch there. So obviously this game kicks off at 7:30 tonight on Big Ten Network. As I said before, Michigan's a 34-point favorite. The over-under is set at 54. And like I said, it's just nice that after all these months, football is here. So it's kind of where we stand. So what is maybe thing you're looking to the most as we head into this game tonight?
Just execution. And once the game final whistle blows, once Brown and Harbaugh and Gaddis are able to evaluate the film, the offensive line play, for example, it'd be nice to see them have a fundamentally sound game to where Patterson doesn't get sacked, get hurt, get knocked to the ground, even keep his jersey clean. Defensively, you mentioned Ty Lee from Middle Tennessee State, 5'9", shifty guy. He is the active leader in the NCAA in receptions. So he's going to be a bit of an issue. He's going to be at least a challenge for Michigan. And the thing is, he's very fast and doesn't run shallow cross patterns, which obviously against Ohio State last season didn't go so well for Michigan. So they're going to get their licks in, some experience, maybe with some more zone coverage type looks there. So I look to see that. I look to see Patterson, obviously, in this new system. How many runs is he going to get? And then maybe there's a little too much talk about Dylan McCaffrey and his playing time. Jim Harbaugh did say that he'd like to see Dylan in every game. So it's going to be interesting to see how he fares.
Can I stop you really quick there?
Go ahead.
This is my problem with the playing two quarterbacks at once thing, is that Michigan's got 5, maybe 6 wide receivers that they feel really good about. They got a couple tight ends that they really like, Sean McHugh and Nick Eubanks. It's one of those things where Dylan McCaffrey comes in the game and then Shea Patterson goes out wide. That's a wasted snap to me. Yeah, it might be a different look, but when you have all the guys that they have, and we don't know how good they are yet. They might not be as good as the Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin that group at Ohio State last year. But I think that potential is there, and to kind of be a little gimmicky and put another quarterback on the field,
at the same time,
that bothers me.
I agree with you. If that is the case, to where we see a few snaps where McCaffrey's out wide or Patterson's out wide or something, I think that's waste of another playmaker on the field. With that said, we're going to find out tonight or maybe against Army next week whether that is what Harbaugh means by I'd like to get Dylan McCaffrey in the game, or it's actually going to be maybe more of a Tate Martell type thing for Ohio State last year, where it's just McCaffrey. No, I'm not saying it worked, but hey, people have ideas from failures, and I'm not saying that Michigan's going to do it, but they easily could. But basically what I'm getting at is McCaffrey could legitimately get in the second quarter of action against Army and Wisconsin, if you buy what Harbaugh's saying. But we'll see. I know you don't like the 2 quarterback thing. You think you think Patterson's the best and going to run it out the rest of the season.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I tend to believe that those comments were kind of taken out of context. I think he wants both quarterbacks to play, and that you probably have a big enough lead to get your quarterback in there. Your backup
That's
guy.
true.
I'd love to see Joe Milton get in there too, get some snaps, because I think he's still probably a couple of years away too. So any game reps that you can get for him would be a huge positive. So we talk about the offense. What do I expect this new offense to look like? I think overall, we don't know play calling wise how Gaddis will have a feel for the game or any of those types of things, but I think what we are going to see is an offense that's tailored more to fit what Shea Patterson does really well, which is you have a guy who has a pro-style arm and a guy who's able to, he's not maybe a burner, but he's a guy who can still go out there and pick up some yards with his legs. Looking forward to seeing how they utilize that, but I think that this fits perfect for that. There's going to be a lot of RPOs, so he's going to have to make a lot of reads. In terms of the reads, that's something he showed last year that he can do really, really well. So I think it's going to be more tailored to him than it has before. So excited about where things are heading there and what they have to offer on that front.
On offense, there's a lot of possibilities. As you mentioned, there's a lot of positions where they feel they have 4 or 5 deep talent, or anybody can be a playmaker on any play. That includes the tight end position, where Jim Harbaugh the other day said that Eric All, who right now is perceived to be the number 3, and that he's going to play a lot. So at every position, you're going to be seeing multiple guys get meaningful snaps. And I think that bodes well when it's more unpredictable for a defense to prepare for the opposing offense. And beyond that, this is a system that Patterson's familiar with running. Harbaugh and Gaddis have both said that he caught on from an early point in time in the offseason, and he's been commanding it well and actually teaching it to other players. So to me, there's no excuses for Patterson and the Michigan offense not to be firing, not necessarily on all cylinders, but firing at a high degree against Tennessee State.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about the offense here as really the first 20 minutes or so that we've been on the air.
That's right.
I want to go through a few just quick hitter things that I'd like to see. Obviously, we want to see how that new offense looks. The running back rotation, who's going to get that first? I don't even think it really matters who gets that first carry. I'm surprised it was True Wilson. I even think to a certain extent, these first few weeks, even heading into the bye week, it's just going to be a kind of by committee approach, and they'll go from the whole meritocracy thing. So Zach Charbonnet, a ton of hype around him. I tend to think he's the guy who leads right now. In my gut, it feels like he's probably going to first carry and get quote-unquote the lion's share of the carries, so we'll see what happens there. Obviously, we talked about the wide receivers already. I think they have as many as 6 guys that you're going to get. At least you'll definitely see 4, probably see 5, and then Cornelius Johnson, the true freshman, probably rotates in there. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Nico Collins, Mike, the freshman, Mikey Sainterstow, Ronnie Bell, a guy who kind of came out of nowhere to be a factor as a true freshman last year. I'm interested in seeing how those guys go. But I think as we kind of pivot and switch over to the defense here, the defensive line rotation. We know there are questions on that back 7 with the linebackers, with Gary, but we're looking at a group now in that front of the Michigan defense where we need to replace Rashawn Gary, we need to replace Chase Winovich. I think they have the guys to do it, but not only do they have the guys to do it, I think they're as deep as they've ever been. There's a chance they could go as much as 10 deep, 11 deep. There's a lot of things they could do, and I think we're going to see a lot of guys play tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you have Mike Dana, who was a transfer from Central Michigan, and Dana had, I believe, around 12.5 sacks last year.
He was a beast at Central.
He was an absolute dynamite player at Central Michigan, but nobody heard of him because they had a bad season last year. So now he enters Michigan as a grad transfer, and all the reports from the defensive staff and Harbaugh have been that he's been performing at a high clip, and he's one of the first guys in, last guys out type person. And then you have Josh Uche. He's going to be a bit of a hybrid. He will stand up at linebacker, but he's also be in some packages where he has his hand in the ground, blitzing off the end, and Kwity Paye. I mean, as you said, Aiden Hutchinson. There's so many. Mazzie Smith. This truly is as deep as Michigan's been on the D1.
We legitimately do not know who's going to start there.
It's
and
crazy.
We don't know who's going to break out there or any of that stuff. So it is crazy. The other thing we talked about before, kind of the linebacker pecking order. Michigan has a couple of big-time guys to replace up front, but then you got to replace Devin Bush at middle linebacker as well. It feels like Josh Ross is going to be the guy there, and they're excited about him. He thinks that he's more than ready to go. I think we're going to see a little bit more. I think we're going to see Cam McGrone and Jordan Anthony kind of rotate, not just there, but maybe on the weak side too with Devin Gill. I think Josh Uche is a guy who, I've said this kind of all off season long, I feel like he has a chance to be
maybe a sleeper pick for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Just a chess piece. You can put him up on the line. He can rush the passer. He can drop back into coverage and defend the run. I think he can do a lot of things really well. And because Michigan's been so deep defensively, he hasn't really had much time to shine. But now, he's an upperclassman. He's heading into one of his final years here at Michigan, and I think he's ready to take a big step as well. So that's a guy. If you're asking who's my potential breakout pick on that side of the ball, that's who I'm looking for. It's Josh Uche.
Yeah, he had, I believe, 7.5 sacks last year and limited time on the field. I mean, he was not a starter. He was a key playmaker, but Rashawn Gary and Winovich kept him off the field a bit. So now they're going to use him in multiple ways. He's going to be a Swiss Army knife of sorts. The Viper position is usually considered that title, but Uche is going to do that in his own right at OLB and DE. And I totally agree with Anthony here that he could indeed be a front runner or a dark horse pick, however you want to perceive it, for Big Ten Player of the Year. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, and then as we
move back to another level of the defense, the secondary. Personally, that's my biggest question about this team heading into this year, heading into this game. We know Lavert Hill's really good. He's an all Big Ten, All-American type of player. But Ambry Thomas, who looks like he was on the field warming up tonight, I don't know what that means for his playing status. Assume that he's going to get out there and get some reps to some extent, but I think that Vincent Gray will probably still start at that number 2 cornerback spot. From there, DJ Turner, Jamon Green, Jalen Kelly Powell, figured all get time in there, quarterback. And then at safety, for as much as Dax Hill, the 5-star freshman, has been hyped up, and that's not to say he hasn't impressed them, I think Michigan is pretty impressed with how Brent Hawkins has come on at free safety. And that's a guy who, by all accounts, might be one of the more improved players on the team this entire offseason. So they're excited about what he can bring to the table next to Josh Metellus, who, again, another all Big Ten type of player. So it's kind of weird. The last few years, things have been really strong at cornerback with guys like Jordan Lewis, Channing Stribling, and you get Lavert Hill, David Long. David Long goes to the NFL last year. You still have Hill there, but now cornerback's kind of a question. But the playmaking and safety to me is as good as it's been in quite some time there.
The safety position is deep. I mean, you have Metellus and Hawkins, but then Jamarick Woods. He's been a great special teams player the past couple of years. Maybe we'll see him back there every now and then. Dax Hill, it's been reported he's had a bit of a learning curve, but the raw talent's there and evident. He's a playmaker.
Yeah, he's going to play. Just because he's the 4th safety, I mean, they have 3 really good safeties right now, and he's a freshman. It's one of those things where Donovan Peoples-Jones was a 5-star guy coming out of high school on the other side of the ball. But there are nuances to the position that you'll never learn until you get to a college program. DPJ never had to run a route at Cal Tech. He barely even played wide receiver. He was a kick returner and just ran everything back for a touchdown. So it takes time. And, it's not like, I think defensive line, offensive line, sometimes those guys are just physically ready to play. Same deal with running back, to a certain extent. But, patience with him. You're going to see him a lot. He's going to play a lot on special teams. Maybe just not as big of an instant impact guy as some people were hoping for, and that's fine. It's a 3 to 4 year plan whenever you recruit a player. So that's where things are looking on the defensive side of the ball. Are we confident that there's no doubt in my mind that this team will still probably be nationally ranked in terms of being an elite defense, but I kind of feel like there's a chance that there's a little more big play chances that teams might be able to pop them and catch them sleeping and use some of that aggressiveness and youth against them.
You could be right. I'd like to think not, because the past couple of years, the best competition, Michigan's losses, big plays did them in. It wasn't just the shallow crossers. Against Notre Dame, Brandon Woodbush had a couple huge passes, a huge touchdown pass, I believe over 50 yards. So against the top competition it's kind of defined Michigan's season, Notre Dame, big loss, Ohio State, big loss, and we could look at other losses in Harbaugh's tenure. It's been those couple big plays. The defense bends, don't breaks, plays pretty good, but then boom, they get punched in the mouth for a big freak play. So I'd like to think, in theory, that Brown's kind of figured out, hey man, I can stop that now, but we're going to see.
Yeah, please, for the love of God, learn to defend a crossing route.
Please.
And I've seen a few people refer to Middle Tennessee State as kind of like a poor man's Ohio State. So maybe
That's an insult to Ohio State.
well, I mean, in terms of some of the things they do schematically,
Yeah.
like make no mistake about it. Like this whole season is kind of prepping and building for that. And
It
some of
is.
the players
It
have
is.
even admitted that when it came to those Indiana Ohio State games at the end of last year, they were starting to see things that they hadn't seen in training camp or anything, and those guys were tired too, so they weren't really prepared for it. So I get the sense that they feel like they've turned the corner there, and I feel like conditioning, taking care of your bodies, that was a big thing, message from Harbaugh to the team this year. I feel like they've taken that to heart, so we'll see what happens. But as we wrap up here, there's not much more we can really say. I mean, Michigan's a 34-point favorite. They're going to score a lot of points. It's probably going to be pretty ugly. Is there anything, and I asked this question on Twitter either yesterday or the day before, like what do you need to see on Saturday night that'll just make you feel like, okay, I feel pretty good about this? So I will pose that question to you.
I would say less than 10 points scored by Middle Tennessee State, over 45 by Michigan, and yeah, points they're important. Sorry, so points.
Generally speaking, you need more points than the other
I know. I'm going Dan Phelps on you here, but truly, what I'm saying is, just be relentless and try to score as much as possible, man. I want to see Michigan get over 60 tonight, and I want to see Patterson
60. Wow.
60. I want to see Patterson get a 40-yard touchdown pass and 20 yards running in one game. I want to see 550 yards of total offense. I want to see 5
That's a little more of a
sacks.
conservative pick than the guy on Twitter who
What
wanted
did the guy say?
900 total yards. He wanted 300 passing from each of the quarterbacks.
600 running by.
Something
Wow.
something crazy.
Cool.
I don't know what. Okay, really quick before we get out of here. It sounds like you're expecting 60 points. So what's your game prediction for tonight?
Game prediction, 60-10.
60 to 10. I'm gonna be a little more conservative with it. I'm gonna say 45 to 13. I think math is hard, but I think that would have Middle Tennessee State covering, but it'll also give them the over too. So I think those are the picks that I made earlier this week. So I'm gonna stick to that. I think there are gonna be some hiccups on both sides of the ball. I think it'll be pretty dominant, and if Middle Tennessee scores points, it will probably be later in the game when those younger guys get in there. So I think that's going to do it for us here. Appreciate you guys following along at home. Appreciate Circ Bar for having us out here. We've been out for a few hours. Nice little space. Come on out, check it out. We'll be here next week for the noon game against Army. So I've been Anthony Broom and Trevor Woods. I'll sign off for him as well. You can follow our coverage tonight. We're heading over to the stadium now. We will be there probably within the next 20 to 25 minutes. So you can follow our coverage at Maize and Brew. So thanks for stopping by, talking some football with us. Trevor and I will have a post-game podcast reactions whenever we get to it. After tonight's game, we'll do it live from, or not, it won't be live because it'll be like 2 o'clock in the morning by the time we get to it. But we will have it from the big house, and we'll have that ready to roll for you. So thanks for following along, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.